Welcome, everyone. I am Zach Jones from Vertical Measures, and I'm your host for another installment of VM's monthly webinar series. Today's webinar is titled 2018 SEO Trends, 5 Ways to Stay Ahead of the Curve, and it will be presented by our Senior Director of SEO Services, Jim Bader. Jim leads the SEO Services team at Vertical Measures, and he's responsible for organic search and link development strategy for our clients. He has over 18 years of experience with building and managing successful teams, both in agency and in-house for several well-known corporations, both in the healthcare field and hospital verticals. Jim's expertise includes SEO, link building, local search, content, and digital strategy. Before I hand it off to Jim, though, I do want to go through a few notes. Today's webinar, the slides and the recording will be available tomorrow. We're going to send out an email to everyone that registered, so that's you. And you could also find all of our previous webinars at verticalmeasures.com/webinars. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to ask them on the questions chat tab on the webinar interface. We'll get to those at the end with the Q&A. Ask at any point too, that's fine. And finally, last week, we released our Future of SEO Trends in 2018 ebook. And we have attached that as a PDF in the handout section. Feel free to download that, or you can go to vert.ms/2018-SEO-trends and download it there. It's full of a lot of great stuff that Jim's kind of going to touch on, but you get a much more in-depth look at it. So that's all for me. I'm going to hand it off to Jim now. Take it away, Jim.
Thank you for that intro, Zach. Hello, everybody. I know that your time is super valuable, so I just want to thank you, first off, for taking the time to hang out with us today. If you've been following SEO for a while, or even through the last year, you already know that there's a ton of potential topics that we could have covered, a lot that were evolving through 2017. I'm pretty sure that there were more things on your team's to-do list than there was bandwidth for. But now that we're a quarter of the way through this year, we want to revisit a handful of these and just reset on where we think the most value is for you and your team to focus through the rest of the year. So the topics that we're going to cover today, mobile first index. So Google's evolving in that direction. We want to cover that. Site security and the importance of migrating to HTTPS. How page load speed affects your organic search performance. The recent change with meta description tags, and a mystery topic that I think you'll find very interesting, maybe a little surprising. So with that, we'll start with mobile first indexing. And I want to mention that as I go through each of them, I'm going to give a little bit of background to catch everybody up. I want to provide a little context for the challenge, give you some actionable takeaways that will help you and your team stay ahead of your competition. And I'll be referencing our trusted SEOmeter to illustrate our team's level of importance. So for this one, we gave it a score of 91 out of 100. So what is it? So Google is shifting the focus of their crawling and indexing resources from the desktop version to mobile for a website. Why this score? Google's given website owners several years to prepare for this. So if it's something that you've been putting off or something that you haven't had time to pay attention to, now is the time. It's about ready to get real for them. And what we already know, historically, Google was only focused on the desktop version of a website. In the years leading up to 2015, the entire SEO industry was watching the trend of mobile catching up to desktop in total searches. In April 21st of 2015, they announced that they were moving towards a mobile-friendly algorithm. They actually dubbed it Mobilegeddon by some of the industry, SEO industry pundits. And although the impact of this wasn't really as bad as everybody had braced for, it did send a clear message of where Google was headed with this. In May of 2015, they officially announced that searches from mobile devices had eclipsed desktop for the first time ever. A year later, they started giving a ranking signal boost to sites that went mobile friendly and paid more attention to this. In November of 2016, Google announced that they were going to shift their core algorithm to mobile first index, and it's on its way. And at almost a full year later, they actually started indexing mobile first for some sites. And just last month, Gary Illis announced at PubCon that mobile first is getting ready to expand for all sites. And they also announced that it would have an increase in ranking signal effect. The other interesting thing that they said was that desktop versions would be updated less frequently. And that's actually something that we're seeing for our clients already. So some of the inside pages that used to be indexed every 3 to 5 days are now, we're seeing the cache dates that are up to 1 to 3 weeks. So they're already starting to pay less attention to desktop from indexing. So what are the takeaways that you and your team have? If you still have a separate mobile site, you're kind of behind the curve. So consider going responsive. This is actually what Google recommends. It will make it much easier for the engines to index your pages and a better user experience for your visitors. You also want to monitor your analytics. So if you see an increase in metrics like bounce rate, time on site, or pages visited, with your mobile version, you're going to know that you have a problem and that users aren't consuming it like you'd expect them to. Also, check your Google Search Console data very closely. Many times if Google sees an issue with your site, they're going to tell you about it right there. And be careful with pop-ups. I know it's a webmaster favorite to try and draw people in and convert people, but be careful with how you use them, and don't use takeover interstitials. Google's already said that they'll penalize for this, and they've been doing that for over a year. It's a very unfriendly user experience. So watch what you're doing with the mobile site and make sure that you're trying to present the best experience possible for your visitors. And use structured data wherever possible. This is going to be even more important to the algorithm coming soon. And if you're able to land the featured or the rich snippet, can mean an increase in traffic. The search engines, they continually find new ways of leveraging structured data, so it's definitely something to focus on. Also, don't skimp on content for the mobile version. So the old train of thought was it's a smaller screen, so there needs to be much less content on mobile, but that's not necessarily the case. Use as much as it takes to answer whatever you feel like the visitor drove the visitor to your page. And if that takes a lot of content, then so be it. If you feel like it's too much for them to navigate, you can consider using expandable content or JavaScript switches that will condense the page and they can expand it when they want to read it. If that makes it easier for visitors to consume, Google's already said that there's no risk with that it's all about providing a better experience. And test your pages often, especially if you've just made a significant change with your website. No one knows what Google wants more than Google, so use their mobile-friendly tool to find out what opportunities they have for you there. And there's another tool that my team uses from SEOcentro.com that also gives you some other metrics and some of the specifics of opportunities to improve. So the next topic that I want to cover is HTTPS and site security. So we gave this a SEOmeter score of 88. And what that is Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure is really the secure version for the communication that happens between your browser and the server. So when you see HTTPS in the URL, the visitor can be assured that all the data that's sent back and forth is going to be encrypted and not at risk of being hacked. And Google is completely committed to this mission, so resistance in this area is totally futile. If you've been putting this one off, it's time to take this one seriously too. For small websites, it can be relatively painless. With bigger enterprise level sites, it's more comprehensive. There's often more back-end components that you have to negotiate, links, and a lot of things that can break. But it's very important, something that should be on your radar soon. So what we already know, in August of 2014, Google first announced that HTTPS was important enough that they made it a ranking signal in the algorithm. In 2016, Backlinko.com studied 1 million searches and discovered that HTTPS had a very strong correlation with page one rankings in Google. In October of 2017, Google actually emailed every Search Console user advising them that a not secure warning in Chrome was coming for any site that still collects data over HTTP. In November of 2017, HubSpot conducted a survey which revealed that 82% of respondents would actually stop using a site if they saw that it was not secure. That's a pretty huge number and a significant number of potential bounces for your website. And just last month, Google made it official that this summer, Chrome is going to show not secure warning for all HTTP sites. And this is what it'll look like in the browser. So there are benefits to moving to HTTPS, as we mentioned, as part of the algorithm. So there's a ranking benefit and could mean an increase in organic visibility. But migrating to secure isn't just about Google, it's about protecting your web visitors. So encrypting all of the data communication keeps your browsing history safe, but also keeps your personal information and especially credit card data safe. So HTTPS technology also loads faster in the browser. So there's a page speed benefit as well. And if you want to see this for yourself, there's a cool website at http://https.com, which compares these two side by side. So the takeaways for secure, HTTPS migration isn't as intensive as like a full domain migration, but there are best practices that you'll want to follow that will minimize any loss of organic traffic. So this is the process that my team uses when we manage one of these types of migrations. So first you want to purchase and install the certificate, which verifies that you are who your website says you are. You want to crawl your site with a tool like Screaming Frog to document all of the current optimization and page info. You need to make sure that any of the absolute internal link references are changed over. Then create a 301 redirect rule or map, and this is going to allow the URLs to change over faster in the search engines. You also want to update your preference in Google Search Console and Bing Webmaster Tools. And update your XML sitemap and canonical tags, and resubmit the site to Google so all of the changes will change over quicker in the index. And you want to update any URL references in any back-end applications like A/B testing, heat mapping, or any other marketing platforms that are connected to your site. And if all of this sounds too daunting, you can just get us to do it for you. So the third topic that I want to cover is page load speed. And that's the amount of time that it takes for all of the elements of a web page to completely load in the browser. So why an 85? Concerns with site speed have been around for over a decade, and it's now widely understood that has an impact on performance, and Google's getting ready to up the ante here too. So what we already know, slow pages decrease the website conversion rates. If you're an SEO veteran, you've probably seen this stat several times, but back in 2008, the Aberdeen Group did a study that revealed even a 1 second delay in page load speed could cause a 7% decrease in website conversions. That's a pretty big number. We also know that it's part of the algorithm. So in 2010, Matt Cutts officially announced that page load speed was so important that it's now one of the 200 factors in the search algorithm and could affect your rankings. And we also know that slow page speed increases the bounce rate. In 2016, a Google study showed that 53% of mobile users will abandon a website that takes longer than 3 seconds to load. They actually went on to mention that the sweet spot is really closer to 2 seconds. So people are really impatient and you have to load those pages fast on mobile. So what are the takeaways here? So you want to know where you stand. That's the first thing. You also, there's tests that we love, the Google Page Speed Insights. There's a bunch of free tests that you can use. GT Metrics, Pingdom, Web Page Test is another good one. Or you can just download Lighthouse for Chrome. That's a great development tool. It analyzes every page element in a waterfall chart and makes it really easy to see which elements are taking the longest to load and where your opportunities are to improve. But from our experience, the single most important thing that you can do to increase your page load speed is optimize your images. So 9 out of 10 of our clients that face these types of issues see improvement from just this one single effort. So some of the best practices include making sure that the images are in a friendly format. So instead of saving with the heavy PNG file, use a GIF or a JPEG. Also size them down to the actual on-page dimensions. So if the HTML is calling for a 300 by 200 pixel image, that should be the size of the image that the browser pulls down. We often see clients using massively sized images when they don't need to be that big for how it renders in the page. So use appropriately sized ones for desktop, tablet, and mobile as well. That's another area where we see shortcuts being taken. So even with responsive sites, we sometimes see the same large image being referenced. Also, use the lowest resolution possible that doesn't bring a loss of quality. And observe the normal SEO best practices. So you want to use descriptive keywords in the file name, and you want to use a concise and accurate alt tag. The other recommendation that we can make is to investigate the accelerated mobile pages. So these are simplified versions of a web page that are designed to load significantly faster. There's several benefits to AMP. These pages load asynchronously instead of all at the same time. Everything outside of your page content loads last, so visitors actually can consume the content immediately. And AMP caches most of the content and assets at various locations across the world, which means a shorter path for loading the content. So the fourth one that we want to cover, which may be a little bit different and not something that you would expect, and that's the recent change with the meta description. So our team only scored this a 35, so you're probably wondering why I would even include this, but the low score is exactly the point that I want to make. So if you're not familiar with this tag, it's the tag that tells the search engine what the web page is about. It's also the snippet of text that you find in the search results underneath the website link. So Google recently made the change to expand the character maximum to almost double the size. So our position on this is that this topic has really had a lot more discussion and debate than it's worth at this time. I'm sure that there's a lot more impactful things that your team could focus on ahead of this one. But let's give a little background on it. So we already know in 2009, Google announced that neither the meta description or the meta keywords are used in the algorithm. With that being said, there's still some value to them. A well-written description can be useful to entice the searcher to click through to your website from the results page. And a well-written description can make your listing stand out from the other 9 that are on the page around it. The best practice used to be we aim for about 160 to 170 characters in length, but last December, Google officially increased that length to about 320 characters. So this really has caused a little bit of debate on whether there's value in taking the time that it would take to rewrite all of them across your site. And that's kind of a decision that you and your team would have to make. But there's some important things that you should know about this. So Google may not even use the ones that you write. This is the description of one of our articles that were written back in 2015. This article still comes up on page 1 for the search, how much does content marketing cost? This is the snippet that Google's using today. Notice that it's not even close to 320 characters. And the funny thing is, it's not even the actual description on the page. This is the one that we wrote. So the algorithm has decided in its infinite wisdom that a chunk of on-page content was better than the one that we wrote. And in my opinion, it's not. I mean, so there's some inconsistencies. There's also inconsistencies with how they're presenting it in the search results. So this example on screen is for the search car insurance companies. So the top ranking site is for Safe Auto. So the description that's shown is only 142 characters, and it's not the actual meta description on the page. The second listing is from Value Penguin. And this one is 319 characters, and it's also not the actual description. The number 3 ranking site is 142 characters, and it is the actual description. So if you were to go through the rest of the top 10, it's going to be more of the same. 5 were short descriptions, 5 were around 303 to 320 characters. So there's little consistency at this time, and we're seeing this across multiple verticals, so it's not just confined to one specific type of search. So what are the takeaways? Eventually, Google's going to get better, and it's going to get more consistent as it evolves. So if you're considering making changes to the meta description, the first thing that you should do is actually conduct searches for your main keyword phrases. So you want to see how Google's currently presenting the results within your vertical. And before doing anything site-wide, we always recommend testing first. So we're starting to test with our clients by targeting between 250 to 320 characters. We're still following the best practice of including the targeted search phrase, as we know it's still going to be bolded in that description when it's in the search results. And that still helps to stand out and verify to the searcher that it's a good match for their search. And we're also seeing Google starting to test with bolding the semantic versions as well. And if I jump back to the last slide, you'll notice that for the number 2, the Value Penguin description, the search was actually for car insurance companies, but you'll see that car and auto are both bolded. So they are testing with the semantic bolding. And we're also experimenting with call to action. So because the descriptions are bigger and more real estate is taken up on the page, on the results page, and because there's actually more character space to work with, we're experimenting with using calls to action like phone number. So the thinking is if there's more for the searchers to have to navigate on the page, there is the possibility that they may convert right from the search pages. So we're testing with that as well. And if you're going to test with meta descriptions, a good place to start is with your Search Console data. So you can look for pages with a low click-through rate or pages that have a high number of impressions but low number of clicks. So pages with a low CTR show that the titles and the descriptions aren't doing their job of enticing the searchers to click through to the site. So those are the pages that I would start with if you're going to test. And the fifth and final one that I want to get to is link development. And we gave this a 92. We think this is a super important thing that you can do to improve your performance. So as you may know, the links that point from quality websites and point to your content are basically a vote of authority, and they still have a huge impact on organic performance. So why such a high score? The internet was built on links, and it continues to function on links. So as much as Google may want to distract us from focusing on them, they still work. I can't see this changing anytime soon. So a little background. There's really a long history with links, all the way back to where the very foundation of the internet was based on links. In 1998, Google was founded, and they filed the PageRank patent. So this clearly explained the impact that backlinks would have with achieving higher rankings on their search engine. The interesting thing too, if you've been around for a while with this, is that marketers created, it was a tug of war between marketers and search engines, and they quickly found ways to manipulate the algorithm. So there were tactics like link farms, directories, or even trading reciprocal links. In November of 2005, Google countered with a series of updates that would devalue the impact of low quality links. They also created the nofollow tag, which was designed to control the impact that advertising links would have on the PageRank algorithm. But when it became harder and harder to get natural links, marketers started just buying them. And they found other creative ways to continue to generate links. Some of those were the link bait and guest blogging, a lot of creative ways to anything to get a link to your content. In October of 2011, Google got tough on the paid link violators and penalized many big name brands just to prove a point. So some of these are very well-known names, JCPenney, Overstock, even the BBC. Then came the ultimate shot across the bow, Penguin happened. So Google rolled this little gem out to target sites that use black hat SEO tactics and various link schemes, which scared many big advertisers away. And a lot of companies were shied away from investing in taking part of active link building at this point. However, the one thing that Google didn't or couldn't change was the fact that it still works. So adding quality backlinks continues to influence the rankings. With that being said, it is a new era of link development, and you have to be much safer to succeed and to stay with high performance. Those days of black hat tactics to build links are gone. So each link, it's important that they're closely aligned with the content that it's coming from. So what it should make sense with your industry or vertical, or it should validate you in your physical location. So probably the biggest proof that this still works comes from Google themselves. So a search strategist, Andre Lepatsev, I hope I got your name right, Andre, in a 2016 Q&A with Google, that the three most important ranking factors are content, links, and RankBrain, which is the artificial intelligence platform at Google. So the takeaways for link dev, keep building them. So it does take time and effort, and this is why this is probably the last thing that companies look for as an action item, but they work. But it does involve good old-fashioned research. So you have to get in on the engines and find quality opportunities to be successful. You also have to put together a process of putting together polite and carefully crafted emails that ask for the link to be placed. It also involves follow-up, maybe once or twice after that, as webmasters have a lot of things on their plate other than remembering to add your link. And the other important thing to consider with link development is the disavow file in Google Search Console. So any suspect or toxic links that point to your site can hurt your performance. We use backlink tools like Majestic, Ahrefs, or even Moz's Open Site Explorer, and we mine out any links that look like they're harmful or suspicious. Then we add them to a text file and upload them to Google Search Console. So with the Penguin update now a part of the core algorithm, Google's getting a lot better at detecting and devaluing these low quality links on their own, but they also advise to update the disavow too. So this is really a proactive way to let Google know which domains you do not want to have associated with your website. And one last point that I'll make about link development is that they can move the needle. So this is a case study from one of our clients. They're an online fashion retailer who came to us to improve performance specifically for searchers that were looking for deals on high-end designer brands. So they weren't focused on aggressively optimizing their site, and were really only looking for us to develop links for their site. This is a rare and unique opportunity for us. It's not often that we get a client that only wants link building. It's usually a combination of several channels, so we were able to isolate the performance. And over the course of the campaign, we placed 25 very high quality links for the client, and the result was a 36% increase in organic traffic. And their organic traffic share increased as well from 42% to 50%. So link development really does work. It's worth the investing the time to keep doing it, and it's going to pay off in the bottom line for your traffic and your website conversions. So that takes us through our top 5, and I'll leave you with a quick recap. So take the mobile experience of your website seriously. In just a few weeks, Google will start looking at every site through a mobile lens. So it's really important that your team is ready for that. If HTTPS is not on your team's roadmap, it should be. So Google's on a mission to make every website secure, and they will succeed. So having your website labeled as not secure will definitely negatively impact the impression that your visitors have on your company. Page load speed should also be high on your to-do list. There's many things that can impact it, but as we discussed, probably the most common problem and the easiest one to attack first is optimizing your images. So just making sure that your images are optimized correctly is going to help your page load speed improve significantly. And if you're getting some internal conversation about it, don't stress over meta descriptions, at least not until you're actually seeing that Google is consistent with how they're presenting it for your vertical. Or if you're testing and you're seeing positive results, then that's something worth moving forward on. But even then, you can prioritize and tackle the most important pages first. So it's not something that you have to put the effort in to go site-wide at this point. And finally, keep building links. So don't be scared because of what's happened in the past. They still work. Be smart, build them where they make business sense for your company, but building them consistently will increase your performance and help you generate more traffic for your website. So once again, thank you everybody for your time.
All right, thanks, Jim. That was great. That's a lot of information. I know SEO is quite a detailed beast for most people, or a really difficult beast for people to tackle. So that was really great. So we're going to dive into the questions now. The first one is from Annette, and you kind of touched on it a little, but what are some actionable tips for optimizing content for Google's featured snippets?
Yeah, this is a great question, Annette. And that actually, when I was talking through the topics that I wanted to cover with the team, this was one of the ones that was like 5A. But so for featured snippets, 99% of the time, the snippet that they show in the featured snippet is already ranking on page one. So that should be your first goal. Do your SEO best practices of optimizing the page, and your aim should be getting it onto the first page to be considered. The key to featured snippets is to write the content anticipating what the question is going to be and provide a very specific answer. So there's 3 different kinds of snippets to keep in mind as you're ideating your content. It's paragraph, list, and table. So if what you're covering makes sense to use a list, or it has data, so it makes sense to use a table, make plans to include those. If you decide to just go with the paragraph, make sure that your answer is concise, probably 2 to 3 sentences, something that they can chunk and fit into that feature description box or feature snippet box.
Okay, so it sounds like that's something that the writer would kind of handle. So this question's from Denise. What's the most important directive we can give to our content creators, writers, and bloggers to meet the new SEO challenges?
Yeah, that's also a good question. So one of the things that we're finding as a challenge is something called cannibalization. So we think it's really good to keep expanding your content, but it's also really important to be in control of what you're targeting on each page. So what Google doesn't want to see is 10 to 15 pages that cover the same keyword or the same topic. When they find that, they have to determine which of those 10 to 15 pages actually is the best result to show. So that's the best advice I can get is be careful with your ideation. We always build a keyword map when we get a client on board. So we'll index their site, we'll assign a keyword phrase to each page, and then as we start doing competitive analysis and we do some keyword research, we're able to compare against that keyword map, and any of the gaps between that is where we make plans to build out additional content. So I hope that helps.
Okay, so we're getting a lot of link building questions, so let's start diving into those. Uh, this one's from Fergus. What is the best way to find and gain links from reputable industry-specific sites? Is it by contacting them directly?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of different ways. We have 6 or 7 different tactics that we use when we're looking at link building. A lot of them is actual manual research. So I would say half of the hours that we spend link building is really just in mining the search results for those keyword phrases and looking for those opportunities. We also use some of the tools that I've mentioned, Ahrefs. So we use other tools that can help us sift through these links. We also look for competitor backlinks. So if you start looking at the backlinks that your competition has, there's a lot of good opportunities that can come from that. And I think the most important thing to keep in mind with link building is to keep it looking natural. So one of the red flags you can get is if all of your links are starting to be in that DA 70 to 80, 90 range, that's going to look a little bit suspicious if you've been getting DAs all across the board previous to that. So just be careful and definitely put in the research. That's the way to find these good links.
Uh, Julia is kind of following up to that and was curious what your success ratio is when it comes to getting links on a site.
That's a good question. We've had that internally trying to get that metric. If I don't really know what the hard number is. I know that we send out thousands of emails a month and we get back hundreds of links a month. So if we're in the probably 5% conversion, we're happy. We do know that even a handful of links to some of these inside pages can make a difference. So there are situations where we've just had 2 to 3 links point to it and we can see it lift and rank. So even it may seem small, but it all helps.
Okay, and we'll do one more link building question before we move on, and this one's from Manny, and it's how do brand mentions compare to links in their ranking power, and what effect will they have for a non-branded ranking?
Yeah, that's a good question, and this is one of the areas that the search engines will give a little rhetoric, so you have to watch out for. So anchor text does have a little bit more impact than brand mentions, but what we found is that the brand mentions are the highest conversion ones for us. So if we find opportunities where our client is mentioned in an article, there's a much greater likelihood that we can go to that website and ask that they turn that into a link. And really, when you're looking at comparing a brand mention to a generic keyword phrase, it's the link that's important. So I wouldn't turn away from a brand mention because you want a generic anchor text. The link is the most important.
Okay, this one is from Eric, and it's about HTTPS. I work in an agency supporting many small business owners with their digital. I feel like their biggest holdup is with HTTPS and the cost. Any advice on how to pitch the idea to get them to buy in?
Yeah, that it's been that challenge for us too. It seems to be like the one that it's harder to visualize for companies. That's why I really point back to stressing the not secure and really what that means for the impression that it leaves on a visitor when they get to the website. So if you go to our website, it's still HTTP, but we're in the process of a redesign, so that's going to change. So that would be my best advice, is just point to some of the statistics that are out there of what the bounce rate would be when it's not secure.
All right, so we got a pretty technical question here, so I hope you can answer it. This one's from Hank. Will accelerated mobile pages, CDN, he gives an example of a plugin for WordPress, interfere with the current WordPress CDN plugin functionality?
That's a great question. We haven't seen any kind of conflict until actually just yesterday. So we haven't had any conflicts with that plugin before. And it's too early to tell really what that cause was. We haven't seen it before, and we've been doing AMP for a couple years now. So it's not. I can't definitively say that there is an issue with the CDN, but maybe there's something with that plugin. And maybe if Hank can contact me and we can see which plugin he's using, we can see if it's the same one. But interesting that he would mention that, because we just recently had an issue like that.
Well, maybe he's hacking into our computers and he knows what we're looking at.
Hank's
Okay. So we're gonna do two more, and the first one is from Moby, hopefully the singer, and he's listening into our webinars. Do you have any practical tips to optimize for voice search?
Yeah, voice search, that's a really hot topic now too. It actually ties in with the featured snippet conversation that we've been having so far. So with voice search, it seems fancy because it's Siri, it's Alexa, and it's a different medium. But really, the thing to keep in mind is it's not much different on your website than typical optimization. The only difference is that you're micro optimizing to answer a specific question. So my advice is if you follow best practices for the featured snippet and you're pushing out content that's going to speak to answering specific questions, it's going to give you a greater likelihood of being performing well for voice search.
Okay, so this is our last one, and obviously we can't really go too deep into it, but I figured it's a good one to end on. It's from DJ, and it's what are the top three things sites are doing wrong for SEO?
Yeah, that actually is a great one to end on. The biggest issue that we see is often the websites have a flat structure and no hierarchy to their content. And I mean, I think it's because WordPress makes it so easy to just push pages out that there's not a lot of thought given to the structure always. So a lot of times we'll see clients come to us and everything they're publishing is right off of domain.com/. So really the challenge with that is that keeping in mind how search engines operate. So they don't go linearly from the homepage down like we would navigate a site. They actually could hit your site at any page. So they use that URL structure to get an idea of how that content and how that page fits into the overall hierarchy of your content. The number two thing that I think sites are probably doing wrong is not optimizing their HTML titles and descriptions effectively. So this is another thing that's often overlooked. We'll often see very simple, maybe one word, two word titles, and then dash brand, and that's what we have to work with. So it's still important to include generic keywords in your optimization to fully maximize your performance. So if you're going after a specific product, you want to put adjectives and around that product that are going to help expand that keyword visibility for that page. And the number three thing I think would probably be links. So as we talked and as it's kind of reinforced with how many links questions there were, there's many website owners that they're scared of it or they don't really see the value in it. It's hard to quantify. It's hard to show ROI for. So it's really difficult to invest a significant amount of time and money in that. But it really does work, as we showed. For each one of our link development clients, they see impact. And like I said, it's usually part of a bundle of services that they're doing, but it all works together, and our clients see huge success from it.
All right. Well, that was great, Jim. Thanks for taking the time to do the Q&A, and thanks everyone for submitting those questions. This is one of our best Q&As we've had. So we hope you come back next month. We're going to have a social media webinar with Greg Esposito. He used to do the Phoenix Suns social media, so it's going to be fun to talk to him about that. And then we'll have registration open for that pretty soon, so be on the lookout for an email or follow us on social, and you can get all that information. So again, I'm Zach, and from all of us at Vertical Measures, thank you for attending and have a great day. Thanks again, Jim.